Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. 2022 year in review. It's officially ticked over to 2023, and I think for the most part, most people that I'm speaking to, people are looking forward to 2023 expecting it to be better than the previous. Well, simply because, the fact is, 2022 wasn't exactly the best year on record, now was it? And most people are looking forward expecting things to get better, hoping for a better future. Well, of course, not Joe Biden. Joe Biden is looking back at 2022, thinking to himself, gosh darn, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, giving himself a big old pat on the back as he celebrates his historic achievement. Here's a little glimpse from his Twitter account.
Well, folks, we're wrapping up one of the most productive legislative sessions in decades. Today, we've got 65 bipartisan bills for me to sign into law. Today offers proof that the soul of America is vibrant, the future of America is bright, and the promise of America is real. Cynics and the critics tell us nothing can get done, but they're wrong. There is not a single thing America cannot do, not a single thing beyond our capacity. This is an extraordinary story being written today in America by this administration.
And so obviously the Biden administration is doing what it always does, trying to rewrite history, telling us that Joe Biden is the greatest president in modern American history. But of course, like usual, that's the Democrat narrative, a far stretch from basic reality. And so let's compare the two. Let's compare what Joe Biden is saying about his record and what his record for 2022 really is. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so let's first start off with the obvious, the economy. Joe Biden has been going on and on about his economic recovery, his economic success, his job creation. Earlier in one of the clips that I played, Joe Biden was boasting about the manufacturing jobs that he's bringing back to America. Well, let's just use a left-wing outlet, in this case the Washington Post, fact-checking Joe Biden's flimsy claim that he has the strongest manufacturing jobs record. The facts are very simple here, folks. As Joe Biden continues to congratulate himself about creating jobs, the reality is, and the reality has always been, that these were already existing jobs that were lost during COVID lockdowns. And Joe Biden is very disingenuously trying to take credit, people just simply going back to work. That's not job creation. Now, the second point on the economy. Let's flash back to 12 months ago, a year ago, where Joe Biden said this.
The stock market, the last guy's measure of everything, is about 20% higher than it was when my predecessor was there. It has hit record after record after record on my watch.
The stock market has hit record after record on my watch. Well, I find it very interesting how last year he was patting himself on the back celebrating his stock market success, and this year all of a sudden he seems quite quiet on the issue now, doesn't he? You can't exactly take credit on the economy if the stock market is tanking. In fact, 2022 was the worst year for stocks since 2008.
To the stock markets now, where many investors are looking forward to the next year. Friday's bell signaling the end of trading, but perhaps not the end of the bear market. The Dow, NASDAQ, S&P all ending the year lower than where they started it, making it the worst year for the markets since 2008. Record high inflation, of course, and a crash in the crypto market capping off a volatile year for those investors. The Federal Reserve attempting to bring down inflation by raising interest rates 7 times in the last year.
Oh, and need I remind you, Donald Trump was right once again.
Look at the records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All right, let's move on. I'm going to move on. Mr. President, I have to move on to the next question.
They said the stock market will boom if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay.
Economic issue number 3. Joe Biden keeps boasting about all the bipartisan or supposed bipartisan spending bills and packages that he's been able to pass, the infamous Joe Biden agenda. And as he boasts about this spending, he claims to make life more affordable for Americans, bringing down the cost of prescription drugs, and supposedly bringing down the cost of healthcare premiums. Well, firstly, none of those bills have actually taken effect just yet, so Americans aren't seeing a Joe Biden reduction in cost, yet he makes the claim, congratulates himself, as Americans are still battling multiple decade-long inflation highs, which, by the way, he created. Sleepy Joe infamously claiming that he's sick of Americans who think that inflation is going up because of government spending more money.
So I'm sick of this stuff. We have to talk about it because the American people think the reason for inflation is government spending more money. Simply not true.
Even though during this supposed Joe Biden recovery from the pandemic, he's led 2 back-to-back consecutive years of out-of-control fiscal spending. Absolute fiscal insanity. Spending trillions more than ever spent in American history. And not during the early days, the unknown virus, and the panic that ensued. No, a year and 2 years after, continuing to spend money that the country simply cannot afford, causing a spiraling inflation crisis that his administration has yet to get a grasp of. Spending, spending, spending. It seems to be endless spending. And speaking of endless, I mean, what do you expect after electing a uniparty Washington goon into office? A continuation of the great American tradition of endless wars. Congress may not have declared war with Russia, but Joe Biden is certainly fighting a proxy war with Ukraine against Russia. Well over $100 billion taxpayer dollars being sent over to the Ukraine laundromat as American citizens face an inflation crisis and tumbling economic conditions. Joe Biden will tell you, though, that his track record on foreign policy, and especially with Ukraine, is a massive success, even though all this administration has done is further exacerbate the issue on the Ukrainian border. And of course, speaking of borders, Joe Biden's spending billions of dollars protecting Ukraine's border, protecting Jordan's border and other Middle Eastern countries as well, meanwhile ignoring and actively sabotaging border security on the southern American border. Yet again, another very inconvenient truth that Joe Biden seems to avoid. In his 2022 recap, the endlessly spiraling southern border crisis, which this fiscal year was the worst, beating the last fiscal year's numbers, which were at the time the worst on record. In other words, 2 years of a spiraling border crisis where this administration has made absolutely no improvement and no advancement. Economic policy, Joe Biden gets an F. Fiscal spending, Joe Biden gets an F. Domestic policy, protecting national sovereignty, community safety, Joe Biden gets an F. Foreign policy, Joe Biden gets an F. Whether it's Ukraine or the still lingering issue in Afghanistan. The fall of Afghanistan was, of course, Joe Biden's worst moment of 2021. Well, it lingers on into 2022. As the Taliban has taken total control of the nation, seizing more than $80 billion in American military weapons and munitions, and of course vehicles. And it's an issue that Joe Biden has seemingly just put on the back burner. It's very conveniently just disappeared. But it's still an active Joe Biden failure that lingers into 2022. And I'm sure Afghani women, who are now actively being suppressed, would probably agree. But come on, Corn Pop. So what? Maybe Joe Biden's not the greatest foreign policy hawk. Maybe he's not the greatest economic president of all time. That's not why people elected him. They elected him because Joe Biden's a man of the people, a left-winger, the most progressive president since FDR. Joe Biden's a progressive guy that fights for social issues. You know, like free community college, which he promised on multiple occasions. Of course, never really materialized. Joe Biden totally abandoned that. Or what about the $10,000 to $20,000 in student loan forgiveness that Joe Biden promised ahead of the 2022 midterms? Of course, scrap. Joe Biden also vowed that he would fight for voting rights, and what he meant by that was fight racist voter ID laws. Never really materialized. He claimed that if you didn't vote for him, that you weren't black.
You have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Yet 2 years in office, he's passed no legislation whatsoever targeting minority communities. In other words, he's a total fraud, and now he's fraudulently trying to take credit for all of this success in 2022, when really, it's been a year of domestic and foreign policy failure, a year of record inflation and a tanking stock market. He's made the world more unstable, he's made Americans less safe, and he's also made American families poorer. Not exactly the historic track record that he's currently boasting about on his Twitter. And that's Joe Biden's 2022 year in review in reality. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel if you guys are up for it. I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.